you.
You have been led by the Spirit to Prophecy Keepers Radio, a cooperative service of the White Roots of Peace Council. Whether it be the modern Osaga of Peru, the current Kahunas of Hawaii, today's medicine people of the Americas, the holy ones of Africa, shamans of the East, North, West, and South, or the present-day Ottawahis of the Cherokee, we bring you the traditional elders and teachers of our modern times and their confidants from the Americas, the steppes of Asia, the Holy Land, the islands of the sea, Africa, and Australasia. We have not been conquered, and we defy the established order. This is Will Bluewater, the host of Prophecy Keepers Radio, speaking on behalf of the White Roots of Peace Council.
You know why I'm here. We lost something, a spy plane, and you captured it. And now we're here to get it back. And you know I don't have any food for you, and I don't even have any security for you. You know that your life depends on one thing. Now, what will it be? Life or death? You son of a bitch! Now you choose now! Choose! Either life or death! Now!
It's only appropriate that we introduce to you our nation's most highly decorated Vietnam veteran, Lieutenant Colonel Bo Gritz.
Even now, James Bo Gritz qualifies as one tough hombre. He's the real-life model for Hollywood's Rambo character.
59 confirmed kills, 2 Silver Stars, 4 Bronze, 4 Purple Hearts, Distinguished Service Cross, and Medal of Honor.
He's no ordinary man.
62 citations for valor, 3 Silver Stars, 8 Bronze Stars, 2 Purple Hearts, Presidential Citation. Bo Gritz is just simply the toughest soldier in the history of America.
Fearless men. As Russian troops mass along the Ukraine's border, no one can say for sure whether there will be a shooting war, but many in Ukraine are taking no chances and are training in civil defense just in case. The relative calm and beauty on a brisk winter morning in the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv belies the tension that is building as Russian troops amass along the country's borders. For citizens here, the question of what to do if Russia invades is never far from mind.
I am slowly preparing food for my family, stocking up on water if the water is turned off. We brought a stove just in case the gas was turned off so that the children could cook something for themselves.
For 52-year-old Mariana Zaglo, a market researcher and a mother of 3, it means facing an ominous reality. She has bought a rifle, and she has signed up as a volunteer reservist, doing many hours of makeshift military training. She is one of thousands who are participating in the Ukrainian Territorial Defense Forces. Every Saturday morning, ordinary citizens gather near the Lisova metro station in Kyiv. These are the civilians that have signed up for weekly training in the forests just outside the city. Their numbers have grown since more than 100,000 Russian soldiers have mobilized on the country's borders.
In short, all the people who come here love Ukraine. They're ready to defend it and want to know how to do it, and what can be useful in this Ukrainian-Russian war to protect our state. In fact, the golden rule taught here is how not to die in the first minutes of battle, so that later you can continue to serve and be useful.
Ukraine's territorial defense forces are not new. They've been organizing weekend military training for civilians for several years now and have battalions of experienced reservists ready to help the Ukrainian army if needed. What is new is growing participation, fueled in part by social media and attention to Russia's aggressive stance. Newcomers are easy to recognize by their everyday clothes and wooden guns.
There are more and more new people coming to our organization because people are trying to find their place in this new reality. And those who decide they should defend their country, they find the Territorial Defense Forces for that.
Today's drills will take at least 6 hours, starting with the nuts and bolts of basic training. How to stand at attention, how to hold a gun, and how to move with a weapon in their hands. New skills for many who hold traditional jobs.
When you have like a normal week, you think partially about this invasion, but the most time you're working, then it's okay. And on the weekends you think, oh, what should I do? How to be prepared, and that's why I joined here.
We're here to learn and to train in order to know what to do and where to go in case of events, and who to communicate with, who to work with to defend the land, the city, the family.
My plan is to defend, and my family also know what to do. We are prepared. I've instructed, and they know what to do. We are ready. I think Ukraine now is ready, and every week we are much better ready for possible invasion of Russia.
Раз, два, раз, два, раз, два.
2 people will be in the building at 12 a.m., 2 at 9 a.m., and 2 at 6 p.m., 30 meters away from the building.
The instructors are mostly veterans from the ongoing war in eastern Ukraine, where separatists abetted by Russia have carved out political enclaves. 48-year-old Siri Green is one of them. He's been training civilians for the Territorial Defense Forces since 2018.
We live every day expecting to be attacked. We have no choice but to do so. That's why we get people used to the idea that we'll all have to live this way. That's why we train, we prepare. We train people, we pull people up, we constantly coordinate. We work constantly.
Mariana Zaglo says the training has made her calmer and more confident as she navigates the uncertainty about peace and war, her nation's past and future, and, quite literally, life and death.
That's exactly why I'm ready to fight, so that my children can live in a Ukraine without the problems that exist now, without the Russian-backed occupation, without the bad economy, which is very much strained by this war, and with a free, independent, prosperous country.
Fighting soldiers from the sky.
Hi, I'm Colonel Bo Gritz, United States Army Special Forces. I'm excited to be able to bring you a series of training videos known as SPIKE. SPIKE is an acronym. It stands for Specially Prepared Individuals for Key Events. When 911 cannot or will not, for whatever reason, respond to your distress, then this training will prepare you to take care of yourself and those that love and depend upon you, your family, your church members, your neighborhood. When you consider Hurricane Andrew, 911 couldn't respond to the many calls if there were any telephone lines left up. When you take a look at the riots in L.A., consider the floods of the Midwest, the storms that went through the Northeast with all of their ice, the tornadoes, when you consider the earthquake of L.A. in January of 1994. People didn't even have a telephone. The food was out. People didn't know how to take care of themselves. In Special Forces, we are trained to go anywhere in the world at any time to perform any assignment. Now, my entire life has been spent in preparation for and execution of this type of mission. I speak Swahili, I speak Chinese, I've commanded special forces in Latin America, I've trained the Afghan, Mujahideen, I've been an advisor in Saudi Arabia. I've been all over this planet helping people who wanted to help themselves. And I think the way that it is not just government, it is not just weather, but when you combine all of the factors that are pressing against those in America who would just continue to live free, you can understand why we've got to be like the pioneers of old. We've got to be prepared. Now, I'm not going to teach you survivalism. Surviving to me is like those who were trying to take the high ground as Noah was floating off in the ark. That's trying to survive. I want to put you aboard the ark. Now, that's preparation. It takes a long time to train a Green Beret. And my promise to you is if you will attend the 10 phases of instruction that I have prepared for you, if you will attend them, or if you will study these videos and practice what you are receiving in these 10 phases, my promise to you is that you can be as prepared, as educated, as trained, as equipped, as organized as Delta Force is. Now, how can I make such a promise? Well, first of all, I was the intelligence officer and reconnaissance chief for Delta Force. I set up the training schedule. They gave me a Legion of Merit for it, as a matter of fact, among other things. I have been all over the world as a Special Forces operative, training key and elite police and military units. I know the curriculum. I have checked your curriculum. It's going to take me 3 years to train you, but in these 10-phase videos, you'll receive every word of instruction except the expletive deletes. We have, for example, in some following phases, where we'll be teaching you gun control. The only gun control for responsible Americans should be able, with the ability to hit the target with every shot. If you point a gun, however, at one of our instructors, you're going to receive an expletive delete. Now, we'll eliminate that, but other than that, you're going to get every word of instruction. You won't be there in 3D. I'm not just training you in spike as an individual, because, friends, I'll tell you something. By yourself, you're not going to be able to make it. You cannot be all things to all people. I'm going to train you to be an instructor so that, like one candle, I can light your fire, and you'll go out and share the skills that you'll receive in this training session to light as many as you will, and they can go out to light those. In addition to the training, we have identified and we have accumulated all of the equipment that you will need to do what you're being trained in. Now, the learning curve can be very steep because there are jillions of options in selection of equipment out there. Some of it's very high dollar, some of it's very low. Some of it that is high dollar is not worth the powder to blow it to kingdom come. And some of the very low dollar stuff is prime. We have gone through and we have identified for you all of the equipment. Not only that, but we have negotiated with the vendors, and we have the lowest prices, I can guarantee you, in America. As a Spike participant, your purchase of this video qualifies you to a catalog that gives you special discounted equipment so that you can supply your own Spike people. Now, this is phase 1. You're going to receive 10 phases in total. Each phase will be divided into primarily 4 major areas of focus. Each phase we will have a self-defense, and each phase we will have a medical part, and then you'll have 2 specialized classes. Now, in phase 1, we're going to use Scott David Weekly. This is a Navy SEAL who has been with me all over the globe. We were the first 2 U.S. agents ever to go into and come out alive from the infamous Golden Triangle of Burma, back when you couldn't go to Burma as a visitor. Scott Weekly is a living 3D MacGyver. The man is a genius. He was Ollie North's classmate in the Naval Academy. You're going to love Scott David Weekly the same way that I do. Scotty's going to teach you, as part of this phase 1 training, how to make a safe zone within your own home. Now, when I say a safe zone, I'm talking about in the event of a Waco. I'm talking about in the event of an assault like occurred with Donald Scott in Malibu, California, where they took the door off the hinges, went in and shot and killed him. I'm talking about the Weaver incident in northern Idaho, where I was able to bring out alive what was left of the Weaver family, the 3 daughters, Randall Weaver and Kevin Harris. They were adjudicated innocent, even though they had been accused of murder of a U.S. Marshal, and 2 of their family. Little Sammy, a 13-year-old boy, was shot in the back by a U.S. Marshal, Arthur Roderick, and Vicki Weaver, Vicky's bride, Randy's bride, shot standing in the door holding 10-month-old Elishaba by FBI sniper Lon Horiuchi. We're going to teach you how to make a safe zone so you have everything within a room of your home. I don't care what the size is. Weaver only had a 30-foot square cabin. Scott is going to teach you how to have a safe zone so that if anything funny happens, and it's not funny when it happens to you, you'll be able to assemble your family there, and you'll have everything required to communicate, to defend yourself, and to live through and survive any kind of an assault by weather or man or 2- or 4-legged critters. Now, Gary Goldman is going to follow Scott Weekly's presentation with land navigation and map reading. If you don't know where you are, you're in big trouble. If you don't know how to go someplace from where you are, you're in trouble. In Vietnam, I was the chief instructor for the Recondo School. We took all of the LRPs, long-range reconnaissance patrol, and rangers, and I was the chief instructor to train them. One of the things I would not allow them to graduate from the Recondo School unless they could positively read a map and use a compass in land navigation. Gary Goldman is going to teach you. You may say, I've been a person who has done cross-country land navigation all of my life. You're going to learn something from Goldman, I promise you. If you've never picked up a map, you've only listened to your spouse try to tell you how to get someplace, you're going to learn a lot from Gary Goldman. Now, the third part of this is going to be emergency medical training. We're going to teach you how to suture. We're going to teach you how to debride. We're going to teach you dentistry. We're going to teach you combat surgery. You're going to learn it all in the 10 phases to keep my promise where you'll be as qualified as Delta. As a matter of fact, in phase 8, we're going to award you a Green Beret because you will have completed all the phases and all the training that a normal Green Beret does. In phase number 9, you're going to get a flash that shows that you are fully qualified. And in phase 10, on graduation, there's crossed arrows for you. You will have earned them. But you've got to start here. And we're going to teach you in the EMT training the things that you need to keep someone alive regardless of the circumstance. Whether it's been a hunting accident way up in the north reaches of Montana, where there's no hope of communicating or getting someone in there, or whether it's right in the kitchen where most accidents occur. The fourth part of phase 1 training is self-defense. Friends, when you consider that we had a homeless person in Washington, D.C. that had been in a terrible accident just a few years before, his body was so badly burned and scarred that his fingers were fused together. You may have seen it on the television news or read about it in the newspapers. He had a knife that had been actually taped to his hand. Now, he was so unfortunate as to be in front of the White House following this series of where people were crashing Cessnas and shooting at the White House with an SKS rifle. And here this homeless man shows up in there, and the only response of the Washington, D.C. police, the Secret Service, was to kill him. They shot and killed him. If I were to ask you right now, what is the best weapon? You would probably say a .44 Magnum. That's what Dirty Harry uses. It takes him out every time. Make my day. But friends, you got to be real. You may not have. I have a concealed weapon permit to carry a Smith & Wesson .44 mag. I don't carry it a lot, but it sure does intimidate anyone that would want to try and do anything to me, knowing that that concealed weapon might very well be there. But there has got to be a way for an escalation of force. And God knows the police need to know it. The FBI didn't need to shoot and kill Vicki Weaver and Sammy Weaver. They didn't need to burn out Waco in a Holocaust. They didn't need to take the door off of Donald Scott's home in Malibu, California. Whatever happened to Marshall Dillon? Whatever happened to just knocking on the door or sending a letter or making a phone call? Now, the police need to know, and you need to know, various escalations of force. There are many before you resort to a handgun. I can tell you as a soldier, after years in Vietnam of killing leading special operations units, I came back in 1969. My mind was blown. I had seen too much death. I'd been a part of it, had my hands on it, my nose in it. I went up on a mountain because my brains were fried. I took one bullet. I had to decide whether or not all of the death, all of the killing could be possibly justified. I don't want you to ever shoot anyone that doesn't really deserve it. But friends, you've got to be prepared to use that gun, and we're going to show you how and use it effectively. You have got to be prepared to use escalations of force. You got a teenager, for example. They get pretty wily, and you may you wouldn't want to shoot and kill your teenager. You get a drunk. You get someone who in your business is sexually trying to molest you. You have to have the various elevations. And so in your self-defense, as a Special Forces soldier and as a holder of a 6th degree black belt, a Rokudan, in Taekwondo Karate, as a chief instructor for the American Council on Karate Instruction, I'm going to teach you exactly how to use what God has given you and a few extra things to make sure that you and yours remain safe from any predator. two-legged, or four-legged. I think you're going to find these 4 phases are exciting. And in addition to these 4 phases, you're also going to receive special instruction, because we have these briefers that will tell you the law concerning your status in America. For example, in the Webster's Dictionary of 1860, just before the Civil War, the term allodium is defined as most land in America that is owned by the people, that cannot be seized by government, that is not taxable. This is title in allodium. Unlike England, where all land is owned by the king and the people only have fee simple rights. Do you know that there are 2 classes of citizens in America? You can either be a Washington, D.C. citizen, or you can be an American. The choice is yours. Which are you? You need to know the law, because there will come a time when, if you decide to keep on living free, you'll need to know the law so you won't be a lawbreaker. There are ways of canceling contracts that may have attached your umbilical cord to Washington districts of criminal, and our special briefer, Doug Olson, is going to give you those keys for freeing yourself. Now then, the second briefer will be Laren Ross, because he will tell you how to prepare yourself with a year's supply of food and more besides. Laren has everything from herbal seeds to sprouting boxes. He has all kinds of vitamins. He will can anything that you can put in a number 10 can or smaller. And he doesn't use electricity or heat, so nothing goes whiz or fumes or smokes or goes bang or explodes when he does it. One woman, for example, had him can up a whole year's supply of her pharmaceuticals. Here's a senior citizen, didn't want to be without her pills. So she's got a year's supply no matter what Hillary may require in the future. Laren Ross will do that for you. Now, our third and a very key briefer is a man who represents the Christian Patriot Association. He provides us in Spike specially prepared individuals for key events with alternative banking. His name is Richard Flowers. He looks a lot like old St. Nick. If you shoot him in the foot, you hit him right in the heart. Richard has been in this business since 1982. It's legal, it's lawful, but if you want your assets to be as secure as the $10 million that Fawn Hall, Ollie North's secretary, happened to transpose 2 figures when she was sending contra money to the Swiss bank accounts, and it just disappeared, didn't it? If you want no one, whether it's a used car salesman that can pick up a telephone and access your financial records today, if you don't want the government, if you want everyone out of your financial, your business, your personal, whatever it is, then you need alternative banking. You need to talk and listen to Richard Flowers. These special briefers will also be part of this phase 1. Now, this is just the first step. With each ending comes a new beginning. By the time you've reached phase 10, you're going to know with great confidence, just like I do, that you can go anywhere in the world and you don't have to worry about anything, whether it's 4 legs or whether it has 2 legs, whether it's wearing a badge or not. I'm Bo Gritz, and I'm your brother under the Constitution, whether you want me or not, and together we're going to win this thing as a spiker. Now, a final thing. We have land in Idaho. This land has been very specially selected. I am certain it is the best single place on the planet to live. I've been all over this globe many times. When you consider all factors, it may not have the lushness of Florida, but it also doesn't have the malaria and the mosquitoes and the hurricanes. And it may not have the oranges of Arizona and California, but it does not have the earthquakes. When you consider all things, Kamiai, it means rope droppings in the Nez Perce Indian language. It's the place where they used to winter over. They saved the bacon of Lewis and Clark, if you'll go back and read your history. It is an ideal place for you to live, and we have covenant communities. There are 3 of them Now, if you want free land, there is a way you can do it. Here's my plan. It's working out for me, and I think it'll work out for you. In Almost Heaven and Shenandoah, these are two communities. One of them, Almost Heaven, 200 acres. Shenandoah, 400 acres, where you can own land. These are 5 and 10 acre parcels. Now, there are no building codes up in Idaho County. It is the 3rd largest county in America. It extends from Oregon all the way to Montana. There's only one working stoplight. The county allows you to subdivide your property. What I intend to do, 10 acres is too much to pull the weeds on or try to mow it if you've got it in grass. And so I've got kids. I'm going to subdivide mine to my children. It'll be their land. Now, in your case, you may want to subdivide your land and then sell the other acreage because prices are going right out of the roof with things that are happening in California. Idaho is one of the fastest growing states in the nation. And up where we are, people know it is an ideal choice place to live. Your land is free. You subdivide that, you sell off that acreage to other people that pay more market price. Because I can guarantee you our prices are probably half of what the realtors are getting for adjacent property. Your land is yours. It's cost us to buy it out of CRP, which is the crop reduction program. If you don't grow anything, then the government gives you money. Well, if you want to be free, you've got to buy it all out, and we have for you. And there are roads put there. All the tests have been made to make sure that there is water, to make sure that you have a place for percolation and this kind of thing. You'll see at the end of this videotape names and numbers and addresses and telephone numbers. Those tell you where to gain information. It's all free. There's a land packet for you. But sooner or later, friends, you're going to wish that you would have gone west. Not just because that was good sagely advice a long time ago, but because that's going to be a place where you can circle your wagons in peace. We call it a covenant community. We don't care what your religion. We don't care what your sex. We don't care what your nationality, except you have to be an American to live there. Now, the covenant is that you promise to stand in the defense of your own neighbor under his constitutional or her constitutional rights. You should be willing to do that anyway. But isn't it going to be nice to know that there's not just one little house like Randy Weaver. There's not just one little compound like Waco. There are not just one community, but there are 3 communities that are all within easy walking distance of each other, that are mutually supporting each other. As a person who's been on the Army General Staff, as a person who is skilled in the art of land warfare, I know something about the government. They never do anything like Waco or Weaver unless they make a threat assessment. And in our case, they're going to take a look at Idaho, they're going to take a look at our covenant communities, and they're going to decide that we are a lot more trouble than we're worth. We're not going to be outside of the law. We're going to always remain in the law. That's why your special briefers are necessary. You're going to be well disciplined. You're going to be well trained. You don't need to fear anything. You don't need to hate anybody. But if you want to live free, we have a way for you to do it. Now, free agency is the most important gift, I believe, that God has given us. And you can do whatever you want. My purpose in Spike is to give you an option. You cannot make a decision unless, one, you're aware, and secondly, you are prepared. Well, that's what Spike does. And we even have a place. In 1989, I was released when the government could not put me in prison because I would not shred, lie, or withhold information that I had gained about government involvement in drug smuggling. I commanded Special Forces Latin America. I knew all about Operation Watchtower. I went to Burma in 1986 and 87 and was told by General Kunsaw, the overlord there, that government officials, meaning George Bush and others, were his best customers. Now, they told me to erase and forget I would hurt the government. I wouldn't. I walked away free, the enormity of the government. I felt like a gnat facing charging elephants in those days. Now it's jackasses we face with the Democratic administration. In 1990, I started a thing called Center for Action. We held a freedom call in Las Vegas. In 1992, I ran for president, went all over the United States to bear a testimony of the divinity of the Constitution. People asked me in November, what do we do now? We are doing Spike, specially prepared individuals for key events. Once you are trained, once you're organized, once you're equipped and prepared, Now I think the last step is there must be a place. So if things get a little too tough, you need a place to go, a place to live, a place to call home with your final roots. That's why we call it almost heaven. Not just quite, but almost. We'll see you there. I was assigned to B-55, which B-55 was the Nha Trang Mike Force. A little about the history of B-55 and the Mike Force. B-55 up until, I think, June of '68, or April of '68 rather, was the liaison detachment down in Saigon. And in April of '68 decided we needed a larger countrywide Mike Force. So they formed Detachment B-55 as the 5th Mobile Strike Force Command with 2 A-teams, A-503, A-504. And it was stationed in Nha Trang. It was the countrywide Mike Force. By that I mean we could go to any corps and did go to all the corps in Vietnam. There's 4 corps, I Corps, 2 Corps, 3 Corps, 4 Corps being in the Delta, I Corps being up north. Each SF commander in each corps had his own Mike Force.
When I was first in country, brand new, I was assigned to the Mike Force, didn't even know what it was. No one had ever mentioned it in training group. And so I was assigned to the Pleiku Mike Force, 4th Battalion.
I was on guard duty at the point where you came out of Nha Trang, the city of Nha Trang, back toward the Special Forces area. Well, the Mike Force, B-55, had mountain yards. Delta B-52 had Rangers, Vietnamese, and they didn't get along real well. Matter of fact, there have been a couple killings because both units were in at the same time for once. I was standing there and this Jeep came pulling up. Captain got out and said, who's in charge? And I was a sergeant. I said, I am, sir. He said, we don't want any problems tonight with the Vietnamese and the mountain yards. Don't want anybody killed. It's getting bad out here. He said, do you know what the difference? I said, yes, sir, no problem. He said, keep them separated, sergeant. I said, I'll do my best. Well, the next morning about 4 o'clock, there haven't been any incidents. There was a couple fist fights we broke up. He came back and said, what's your name and where are you at, sergeant? I said, Jack Tobin, I'm at the cock horse. Well, I did the part of the cock horse there in the Trang, and all of a sudden they come down and got me and said, you're going to B-55, pack your gear.
And the rank structure was such that we had a major as a B-team commander, a captain as an XO, and then we had the 2 A-teams, A-503 and A-504, and they were commanded by captains, and the XOs were lieutenants. This is before the Team Tech came in, the warrant officer. And we were capable as an A-team to handle a battalion of troops. And again, each company had 3 and 4 NCOs. I was an E7 company commander. Ben Davin was an E6 company commander. And again, he had the authority and the power to go recruit his own people.
It was kind of chaos for a while because the team was so messed up. And then we started recruiting new people. A bunch of the Nungs left after Ashow. We had to start getting mountain yards.
We had about 4 or 5 SF personnel for about 118 mountain yards. That was our top-end complement. The battalions really weren't battalion size, manpower-wise. And eventually, they dropped the designation of battalion and made us into 2 recon companies, the 242 and the 241 company. And I was in both of them at one time or another. And I ended up, I think it was in the 242 company out of Khartoum. And we ran mainly recon for the A camps along the border. Anywhere from Dak Pek all the way down to where Buprang was. It's a long area. We were in Duklap, Play Me, Poly Klang, Play Marong, Tan Can, Dak To, Dak Siang, and several of the other small areas in between those camps.
Mike Force was hilarious. We had the finest fighting troops in Vietnam, and I'm not slighting anybody else's. Our mountain yards went where we went. We lived with them, we fought with them, and too many occasions we died with them. The first company I had was Raglai and Coho. The Raglai were the most ferocious. Company Commander Mang So is the mountain yard that gave John Wayne his bracelet that he wore after that until he died.
You go up to the village chief and you go out and, you know, you had to bum a truck and bum a airplane ride and go out into the villages with the local yards, and you had an interpreter and a couple guys with you. But you'd basically go out there and offer to the village chief money to get him to supply the men to go back to the train with you. And it worked out real well. We normally had an adequate number of people, and the time that I was there, over the almost 3 years, we trained something like 11 or 12 companies of mountain yards, airborne school, the whole bit. And we built a village for them. They brought their families down.
The mountain yards were very protective of me. There were several reasons for that too, which I learned early in my tour, and that was that if the Americans died out in the field, it was very unlikely that they would send helicopters in to pick the mountain yards up, which went against my grain, personally. But that was pretty much the standard operating procedure at the time.
When you're going to be adopted by them, they have quite a ritual about a ceremony. They'll sit down, plug you with the rice wine, or they'll give you the bracelet first. And they'll usually give you a blanket or a bag or a shirt, rade shirt or something like that. Then you have to sit down and drink the rice wine with them. Over there, they had an old sea rat can. You had to drink 3 cans of it. 3 cans of that rice wine, you're not feeling any pain. Then you eat, and the rice is usually about half-cooked pork, some kind of vegetation out of the jungle, and then the rice, of course, with plenty of hot pepper. So now you get sweating good. Then they start beating the gongs and the drums, and you tend to wind up doing one of the tribal dances where it's almost like a snake dance. So your head's spinning pretty good, and then sometime around noon the next day you wake up and realize, okay, I'm a member of the family now because they're bossing me around. It's a neat experience, and what they will do when you go from village to village, they'll look at your bracelet. They'll know what tribe adopted you, and they actually know a pecking order by tribes. And they look at this bracelet, okay, well, he has to be respected here. If it's a sub-tribe, then they're going to top that sub-tribe, and they're going to adopt you. If you know, you've got a good reputation working with them.
Now, I don't know what was the enticement for a yard ceremony. I don't know if it was a certain day they had it, or if a specific incident happened that they had a ceremony. I just know we've been to many, many ceremonies, and they're kind of brutal in that they kill the water buffalo by beating it to death. They don't shoot it or cut its throat, they beat it to death. And then they cook it somewhat. But you ask about the wine, I think there's 7 big clay pots full of rice stalks and stuff like that. and they fill them up with water the night before, and they ferment overnight. And you have to go through each station, and they have a beer can full of water, and they're pouring it into the pot. And as soon as they can empty that can, you move to the next station. But it's not real good wine, and it give you a headache. And when you go through that, then you get the Mountain Yard bracelet, which, you know, is, I don't know where they got the copper wire, but it looked like a piece of welding wire that they had filed on. But it was an honor, if you will, to get one.
They take it serious. To them, the bracelet symbolizes brotherhood and the cycle of life. That's why they carved carvings like bamboo on it, because bamboo is part of their cycle of life.
Each one of the tribes had a different characteristic, but they're all fanatically loyal. And once they knew you cared about them, that's all it took. First action I lost one on was down at Sea Float, and I don't tell war stories, but it was a short, intense real estate fracas. And one of them busted loose, and he saw a chance for a shot and took it. He just swung out himself without orders and just started putting grazing fire on him, just eating him alive. And of course, that drew attention to him, and he was killed. And of course, Walt got up to him and tried to save him, but he was gone by then. And he was a particularly affable Mountain Yard. He was just a great guy. And I'd gotten to know him in the 3 or 4 weeks I'd been working with him. Because he was always trying to learn something. He was trying to learn English, so we'd do 10 words. But he was very, very affable. And I was very sad. I stood there because we were wrapping him in a poncho, calling for the dust off, for the Navy Seawolves to get him out. And I said, if he'd just stayed undercover. He said he did, and my Mountain Yard Company commander, Mike, so he said to the interpreter, he did what he had to do. He saw what his job was. And I said, yeah, but, they realized I was concerned. And he said, there is no yeah, but. That's how they were.
In this one operation we knew we were going on, I was at the end of my bed in my hooch, stuffing my sack with all my stuff, and getting ready for the op. And knock came on the door, and I said, come in. And then, I think it was 13 of them walked in, made a semicircle in front of me. And I'm sitting at the end of the bed, trying to figure out what was going on. And they were very serious. And EHO and EGI and SOMI took turns talking to me. And were telling me that they knew the operation was going to be bad, and that they were going to do everything in their power to make sure that I was going to live and go home, which was just a few months away, and that they would die for me. And when someone, even as young as some of these Mountain Yards were, said that to you, it really, it changed the way you looked at people. That someone would tell you verbally and mean it, that they would die for you. You can't put it into words. You just can't.
In the PIRs, there was a candy, 6 caramel candies. The Yards loved them. They would fit perfectly in a battery box for a Prick 25. Well, we always carried our radio men's batteries. They carried 1 battery, we'd carry 3 or 4, share the load. We've been out about 2.5, 3 weeks, and Bear notices his bag ain't getting any lighter. And they're using batteries right on. What Meatball was doing was taking the battery out of the box, filling the boxes with candy, and then giving them back and putting it back in Bear's rucksack. So Bear's schlepping 6 boxes of candy, which weighed considerable, way more batteries. He's schlepping 6 boxes of candy all over the AO. And Meatball's just laughing his keister off. Bear finally said, he said something about a battery and reached in, pulled one out, and all the candy fell out. He chased around the camp for about a half an hour. He never caught him. But this is how they thought. Mouse, I always bought a carton of Salem's before an operation. I smoked Camels, but Mouse liked Salem's. He would go into my rucksack, get out my hammock, get my coffee starter while I was checking the perimeter, getting everything set in. But he would not take a pack of cigarettes out of that rucksack until he asked me. And I'd say, Mouse, they're your cigarettes, they're for you. Only reason I carry them, you have no room in your rucksack. He said, I can't take without asking. Other mountain yard would think I'm stealing. And you couldn't break that paradigm. It was just, they're just wonderful people.
We were, of course, armed. And walking through the marketplace, there was a Vietnamese officer with all that braid on his collars and epaulets. And a little mountain yard man with a cane was walking through the marketplace and bumped into it. I was probably 15, not more than 20 feet away. And of course, I stood higher and taller than most of the other people in the marketplace, so I had a good look at what was going on. The officer pushed the mountain yard man down to the ground, pulled his .45 out, and shot him. And, it was just like that. And, I mean, my immediate reaction was, son of a bitch. And I took the safety off my car, started aiming it, and was trying to find a clear spot in the crowd to shoot this sucker. And my mountain yards grabbed me, grabbed my weapon, and literally picked me off the ground and walked and ran with me out of the marketplace area. And, I was very mad. Of course, I was pretty young then, too. And I couldn't understand what was going on. It was just blatant murder in my eyes. And they told me that, no, if I had killed that officer, that there would have been a real problem with the marketplace from then on. And I couldn't believe that things like that actually happened, but I witnessed it.
Out in the Dongbo, whenever you recruited new yards, you go out on practice missions before into the woods. Out in the Dongbo, Mickey Mouse, Mang Thieu, one of the all-time smartest yards in the history of the world. But this man had been born in America. He would have probably been one of the people behind the space program. Just brilliant guy. But we're out in the Dongbo. It's been a hot day, and we've been running IA drills, immediate action drills, all day. And he keeps looking up this coconut tree. He says, "Hey, CO, I get a coconut?" "No, when we're done." He said, "When are we done?" I said, "When we run the final ambush, we're done." Okay. Got everybody in position. I said, "When I throw the rock, it's somebody's in the kill zone." Everybody goes. I throw the rock, everybody shoots this way except Mouse, the world's best shot. Bam! Shoots a coconut stem, drops the coconuts, and while everybody else is practicing going across the road being a radio man, he wouldn't do that, he'd be with me. He's over there chipping the first coconut. Just happy as a little clam. I said, "Why you shoot that way?" He said, "No coconut." I said, "Why'd you shoot that way?" He said, "No coconuts that way." I said, "Okay, it makes sense to me." But that's how they thought. They had a thought process that we would call rationalization. Now, Mouse knew he'd been in combat since he was 14. Mouse knew there was nobody out there to shoot back, so coconuts took precedence. And you had to marvel at them. They were tremendous in the woods. They had what Rommel called, and I don't pronounce it well in German, so forgive me, Fingerspruch. It's that sixth sense. In the old Western movies, Gabby Hayes looks over at Roy and goes, "Hey, Roy, hairs in the back of my neck are standing up." Well, that's actually a true circumstance. I know one guy of his arm itched. And what it is your subconscious mind telling your conscious mind that you should be hearing something you're not hearing, or you're not hearing something you should. And it's trying to wake you up to this circumstance. And that's what the whole hair on the neck thing is. They had that. You could be moving, normal pace, anticipating contact, but hey, it's not gonna be for a while. And all of a sudden, you see them get a little lower, getting a little more balanced on their feet. You see them adjust their load, and you realize that somebody somewhere has heard it, and you know it's coming. They're awesome. Now, correspondingly, if you went through a village, you had to stand at the end of the village as the company went past and hit every rucksack and just wait for the one you go hit, whack, you can't take the duck. And you'd hear 2 ducks, 2 chickens, and finally everybody's giving up what they got. And they'd look at you and just laugh and walk on. But in the woods itself, they were silent. They didn't snore. I did. I used to put a cloth in my mouth to keep my mouth so I couldn't set the snore. But I would wake up and I'd check the perimeter every hour or so, 2 hours. And either that or Joe Halligan would. And you'd walk around and you would see them laying there and not a noise being made. And here's 200 people. And then all of a sudden when something happened, they knew what happened, they were reacting before you could even think about it. It was just that they lived in the woods. They were naturally, they were soldiers. I compare them favorably to the Gurkhas. I think if we'd have been smart when we left, we'd have brought the Montagnards with us and given them a state or 2 to play with, and they could have become the all-volunteer army because they'd have loved that idea, especially if we invaded Vietnam. But they were natural soldiers.
When Doc Peck started, the actual camp was almost obliterated initially, and this is, of course, after the fact. I found this out. And we were shipped in to support the camp. Both the 1st Recon Company and the 2nd Recon Company ended up there over a period of about 2 weeks. And on our way up there, the CH-47 that was carrying a bunch of yards and myself and at least one other American, and I can't remember who it was now. We took a round outside of Dak Siang, and the chopper came in very hard about, I'm going to say, 2.5 kilometers from the Dak Siang camp. We could actually see the battle going on from where we were. And we set up a perimeter around the chopper, and we had to call in slicks from Dak To to come pick us up to take us into Dak Pek, because that was where our operation was going to be. Well, they ended up coming fairly fast, picking us up. And when we flew over the small mountain chain between the 2 valleys, when we came into Dak Pek, it was under intense fire. And I remember I was the 2nd chopper to come in. And of course I had, being communications sergeant coming in with the Recon Company, I had the big bags filled with batteries, radios. 1 bag alone probably weighed 130 pounds, and I had 2 bags like that. As we came in under fire, the slick would not hit the ground because fire was coming in. And just as we were about 6 or 8 feet off the ground, an RPG round landed right under the chopper. Exploded out, and you could hear the little wing wang of the pieces of shrapnel hitting everything. And the Montagnards that were on with me, they got off, and they headed straight for that gate. And here I am on the chopper, still trying to drag these 2 huge bags out. Well, I finally got off the chopper, and things were just snapping all around me. RPGs were coming in. And I made it to the gate, and of course found a ditch. That's where I stayed for quite a while. And finally, the firing got less intense, and I started dragging these huge bags into the camp. And I remember that when I finally got within the inner perimeter wire, I finally got help from the Montagnards to take these bags up to the American Hill. Because when you entered the camp, you were on the Vietnamese Hill, as they called it. There were 7 small hills at Dak Pek, and the Montagnards ended up calling it Little Dien Bien Phu, because of the same geographical similarity between where we were at Dak Pek and where the French lost at Dien Bien Phu. High mountains. I mean, they just went straight up out of the valley. Deep valley. River flowing through right by the camp, and then these 7 small little hills that were fortified. And I had gotten in, just about to where we could sprint across a small area, open area, to the American Hill. And we thought we were in an area that was safe. Right behind us were like railroad ties that had been stacked up and then burned behind it. And right down below us were the perimeter trenches with all being manned by Montagnards. And they were firing at that time, and then everything got kind of quiet. So we were standing up. We were about this far apart, And he was asking me about the radio equipment, what I had brought. And just as I was starting to answer him, a round came right between the two of us, hit the wood, splinters hit my cheek, hit his face, and I remember it was so fast, his arm shot out, hit this shoulder, and brought me down real fast. And we were trying to figure out where the sniper was coming from. Most people aren't aware that if you're close to a fence and someone else is on the other side of the fence, very close, they can't see you. But if they're further away, they can see the top of your head over that fence. And that was the position we were in. We couldn't see them, but they could see us. And I don't think they ever found who the sniper was out there. But after that, we got into the camp. And when I got up to the American Hill, I ended up putting up my equipment in the basement steps of what had been the mess hall, which was completely obliterated. The main tactical operations bunker was kind of like, had open holes in it that had been blown out. And there wasn't enough room in there for everybody. So I set up my communications gear down in this area there and started to set up communications with the FRAC 93 because FM couldn't reach out of the valley. And you couldn't put an antenna up because of the intense fire coming in all the time, so I ended up crawling along the ground, laying out the long wire antennas. And then they would just shout across to me what they wanted. They wanted an airstrike, or they wanted a resupply, or whatever it was. And when fire became less intense, I could go into the talk. It went on that way for quite a few days. Some of the most amazing things I saw up there when I first entered the camp were bodies in the wire. And there were several attacks against the camp while I was in it that always occurred at night. And the bad situation that we were in was that we were at the bottom of the valley and the mountains were so high, yet fairly close, that our 8.4 Deuce couldn't reach up high enough to hit their artillery. And what they were using was this huge mortar. It ended up being captured while I was there, or just a day after I left. But the base plate on that, we're talking 4.5, 5 feet across. The tube on it, I swear it was that big around. It was like a miniature portable artillery piece, but it was a mortar. And I remember them bringing it back to camp, and it was, they painted it blue. I remember them painting it blue. But they could sit up on that mountain and hit us with that day in and day out. And all we could do would be call in airstrikes. And during one period of time, during the siege of the camp, there had been other smaller outposts in the valley. And I remember that the VC had put up a flag on one of them. And it was just a little bit out of range of our mortars. And we couldn't get the 106 recoilless rifle from the Jeep that was mounted on the Jeep down below the hill aligned to hit it. And I remember personally calling in the airstrike after airstrike after airstrike, napalm, bombs, you name it, trying to get that flag down. Because once the flag went down, we knew that we would start breaking their spirit. At least that was the consensus in the camp. And I remember when it finally went down, a huge cheer went up around me. They finally got the flag down, but it was still at least a day before that area was cleared out. I have actual pictures that I was able to get out of that airstrike coming in on that. I don't know if you can even see the flag, but it's so small in the picture. And then later on, we ended up, when things got less intense around the camp and we stopped being probed all the time at night, that's when we started doing sweeps of the valley and the mountains around it. And I remember the second day out, we were going up one small valley that intersected with the main valley. There was a mountain yard village that was literally on a cliff. And while I was watching this little old man had come up with 2 5-gallon cans of water from the river on his back with, it was like a basket on his back. But if you ever put 2 5-gallon cans of water on your back, you know how heavy they are. And I am not kidding that the hill he ran up with foot like steps cut into the side of the hill. The hill must have been that steep. And to watch this little old man run up that hill with those 5-gallon water cans was amazing to me. And at that point, when I watched him go up, he was already at the top. We started squeezing up that small little intersecting valley coming down. He ran back down the hill like it was flat. I was in the middle of a sweep coming up the valley, and he was shouting in Mountain Yard, which was Sedang, because they were Sedang there. Luckily enough, some of my Mountain Yards did speak the dialect of Sedang and were saying, Chongsi, we have to stop now. And I couldn't see any reason to stop. Well, we did. And I was within 3 feet of hitting a booby trap with an old pineapple-type grenade set up. And if I had taken 3 more steps, I probably would have set it off, and he saved my life. And which was sad. What is really sad about it is that a few days later, we started receiving fire from the VC, from that village. And of course, the villagers have been told to move, and we had to obliterate the village.
Save the Mountain Yard people exist to help the Mountain Yards assimilate in the United States. We help them find jobs, housing. When they come here off the plane, they have nothing but the shirts on their backs. We give them a 30-day supply of food, furniture, clothing, everything they need to set up in a home. We do set up apartments. Like I said, we find them jobs. We also advocate for human rights for them in Southeast Asia. We have gone to Cambodia to get Mountain Yards out before that were going to be sent back. They were marked for death. We get documentation over to prove who they are. It's all a volunteer 501c3 organization. No one's paid. So what we do, we have to do out of our own pockets. It does limit us in many ways.
If we lost our culture, we lost our language, we lost everything. So we need to maintain it. That's the most important. We want our children will see we are the Muslim people and what is our culture looks like, and let them know where they come from.
We've got a little over 6,000 Mountain Yards right now. This last from, our biggest push was from 4 December to 18 January, we got 259 Mountain Yards out of Southeast Asia. We've had about another 140 since.
We're getting them out wholesale. We're getting them out in larger numbers. We owe them that. I've never been ashamed of being an American. Until the Secretary of State said there's nothing we could do for it, they took their chances and lost. We cut and run on them, and they never did that to us. They deserved better. The Vietnamese have slaughtered probably half the Mountain Yard nations by now. And nobody will raise a hand except us. If we had any guts, we'd tell the Vietnamese we'll take the rest of them. If we can take 13 million illegal immigrants, 400,000, we'll make a dent. It's the right thing to do.